I want to say a really big welcome to night three as we explore journeying in the womb. We have a jam-packed evening tonight to explore some really interesting, thought-provoking ideas about beliefs that we acquire when we're in the womb space. I want to welcome everybody here for the fun and the conversation. I want to check in with everybody before I start talking too much. How has anybody else traveled off into the womb space or the other direction? This is all really unfamiliar. Where's everybody up to? If I jump to you, Nicole, you've experienced the womb?
Only briefly, we went there, and it was it. I think you could sense the trauma that was occurring in me, but I feel like it was at the time just before the C-section.
Yeah. 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 Okay. And so, yeah, so starting right at the beginning of talking about going into the womb space, we can explore the conception. And I've definitely taken clients back to their consciousness as a sperm. And I've also taken clients back to their consciousness as an egg, right up to the birth scene. So yeah, there's definitely hidden gems in your soul's journey, depending on which chapter is opened. So with you, Nicole, when we got to that C-section, it meant that we had to shift and adjust and go look for the answer somewhere else, if I remember correctly.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And very quickly moving on to other people, because we'll come back to that topic. Anyone else been in the womb space?
Yeah.
Do you want to share with us, Angelique?
Oh, just our first day one of this we did. That's that's where I went to the womb space.
How was that for you?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting to what my mum was going through. I actually haven't spoken to her about it, but yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting experience, especially when you start to notice either like the fluid on your skin or the heartbeat, the awareness. I would have assumed that being in the womb or being little, that your whole little body is just in a peaceful little zone, but the truth is
Mm.
you are a soul that's traveling outside of the womb and just kind of even observing what's going on, depending how much you're actually spending your time in utero versus just with the family. Do you want to share your perspective a bit on that, Angelique?
Um, well, mine was when my mum got pleurisy when she was pregnant with me. I don't know what age it was, but it had to do with my health now, and that's the intention I set, and it took me back there.
Wow.
And it was 7 months, so I don't specifically know what age I was when mum, but she was put on pretty strong drugs
Yeah, okay.
because
Yeah.
pleurisy, pneumonia. So that was interesting. So I was like fighting. I didn't want because the drugs came to me, obviously.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was tied up with my health now. So that's where it took me, which was interesting. And yeah, it was interesting. So I released a little bit of that, and yeah, it was
Yeah,
good.
and we're going to explore that tonight a little bit about that soul's journey, soul contracts that are written up. People would assume, like, okay, you've put your hand up to come to Earth to have that human experience, but there's a lot of soul contract work and even exit points within the womb space to leave that commitment and go back and into the spirit world to write up a new contract. I know that people who have either they've done past lives or they've been the miscarried person, and it was like I just needed to come in for a moment of time to explore Earth's energy, here pick up on the density, pick up on the energy, and then I needed a strong woman to actually allow me to leave the womb, to
Mm.
go back and rewrite a new contract that's a little bit sharper for the next intention. So yeah, the mind, it's so fascinating how this all lays out. So to hear you talk about your health and the ripple effect of that, it's like, gosh, fascinating,
Mm,
the soul contract.
mm.
Anybody else been in the womb or want to share? Because we're obviously going to go there tonight, but I'm just checking with the group. Has anyone else had an experience?
Yeah, I did during the NLP training. Right towards the end, I can't remember what we were looking at, but I went back to the womb, but all of my experiences were witnessing the events that were happening outside of the womb.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So seeing the way that and it was more that my felt sense of what my dad was going through. And I could very clearly see myself picking it up as my mum was sleeping next to him in bed each night. And I was just absorbing this information and taking it in. And it became a filter through which I saw a lot of things after that.
And
Fascinating.
then you did the work then to rewrite, hand back the energy back to dad, rewrite it.
Yep.
Do you remember what shifted for you after you released that
Yeah.
experience?
Yeah, everything. So that was all tied in with this idea of like not being able to take up space. And he like him feeling like a sense of awe, rather not feeling a sense of worthiness in the wider family that he'd sort of come into. And once we cleared that and I gave it back to him and had my own, that's when I got my rental, got my workspace. um, all of these things all just happened at once. And yeah, it was pretty magical. Like within the space of a week, huge
Yeah.
shifts happened. Yeah.
And the word that you used was like the ability to take up space. I don't remember all the details, but my interpretation when somebody is making themselves small so they're not too much of a burden on somebody else, they make it difficult to ask for what they want, make themselves smaller. And then when you let that go, it was like, here I am. And then the universe
Yes.
brought in your apartment, location for your jobs, like your
Yep.
business. It was just like bang, 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 bang. And you're like, you asked for it.
Absolutely. And then even just like confidence within myself to be able to take up space. I think third thing was relationship and being able to actually have like my needs to take up space and for them to have a voice and those sorts of things. So it's huge, huge.
Yeah, but it is huge. And when clients ask clients to fill out their goals when they're working and or fill out the questionnaire, what's the problem and what do you want, all of the things. And it's like I just I just want to be able to I want to be free. I want to allow my energy to be free. And what they're actually saying is that gesture, I really want to take up the freedom to be me in my own space rather than,
Mm.
yeah, it's a fascinating one, time and space. Anyone else want to share?
I can hear. I haven't been to the womb, but this was actually with a client. So I didn't like, we somehow made it to the womb, and it was accidental. But this was in our people as well, with who I was with, and she had a fear of blood, but she really wanted to have a baby soon, but she was fearful of getting pregnant because of like all the blood that comes with giving birth. And we came back to, well, she found herself in the womb and just like, I can't remember exactly, but everything that was happening at the time of birth. And I just think there was like a lot of blood, a lot of things happening, and it was a lot of stress going on for her mum, that has created the fear of blood that she had, which was stopping her from that next step. So yeah, that was
Wow.
interesting.
Oh, you highlight an interesting point with clearing people's fears. That fear had the potential to put the brakes on for her to even have a family, like, and wow, to release that. Sensational. Wow, thank you for sharing. As everyone's highlighted a little bit here, there are so many different things that you can solve when you travel back to the womb space. For me, I've noticed that there's a huge pattern about commitment challenges where somebody's got one foot in, one foot out in a relationship and difficulty creating that bond. There's also a really strong theme within validation that yes, there's that healthy external validation. Otherwise, you could be considered a bit of a psychopath. We all need that friendly pat on the back, you did a good job, and it helps your self-worth. But the need for validation, that moment when you're triggered and there's that sense of urgency and needing someone to tell you that you're okay, you're justified to have the feelings that you're having, that validation often stems back to the solution is often found in the womb space, about the validation that you matter, that your needs are appropriate. So again, we're going to explore more of that tonight. The other ones, those are the two huge points where the womb space will take you. The other ones can be difficulty trusting support. Think about the umbilical cord, that support coming in as your way to ensure your survival. So like what Angelique was sharing, if there's like the drugs from medicine, but the medicine, or mum's going through an enormous amount of stress, then yeah, often that can come back to the solution in the womb. As we've said there with Emily, suppressing your needs, suppressing your space, don't want to be a burden. The other ones that I've found is social anxiety, not trusting people's motives, and then yeah, health problems. But the two that really go straight to the womb is always the commitment and the validation. Anyone, I guess, does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. So within my experience with taking clients back to the womb space, it's quite fascinating where I've seen clients go back to the womb and recognize that there was a baby, a sibling there that they didn't know about. So mum had a miscarriage. And so when this little one was coming in, they could feel the fear of the unknown, fear of the loss. And it was quite fascinating that when we finished that session, she confirmed with their mum that she did have a miscarriage, that she hadn't shared with her daughter. And it unlocked all of these family secrets about, again, the fear of the unknown. And it meant that that client could hand that over. There wasn't such a risk in stepping out and being safe in this world, that she could be herself without, again, this burden and this shadow over her. So yeah, it gets quite fascinating. The other ones that I've noticed there is picking up that dad doesn't really want to be here, and the woman constantly attracting in other men that represent dad in some way, where she's trying to prove her worth, prove her value, prove her self-worth to them. And that profound healing that can come from that aha, where that was actually dad stuff. It had nothing to do with my self-worth or having to prove myself. It, again, huge ripple effects from that one. When I'm talking about these types of examples, I'm curious from the group, is it bringing up client cases, or thinking about friends where, like, yeah, actually I could see a pattern playing out there? Is anything sort of coming up for anyone? You're nodding. Emily, you want to share?
Yeah, there's a lot in that actually, and I think it's making sense of what's been coming up for me in the last 4 days in my battle. And uh that just in certain circumstances having that neediness and that urgency for the validation, it's sort of like it peaks and troughs at different times. And I've been getting confused about whether I'm whether that comes from a place of like imbalance that just needs to be tended to, or whether the situation actually valid, like I actually have a valid reason for being concerned and being activated like that. And it's been doing my head in. So I'm really excited to see if there is anything underneath it, and what it feels like after that's cleared. So I have a bit more clarity about how to approach the situations that are popping up.
Yeah, well, I do know with client sessions how the spirit world tends to bring up, if they know that the session is booked, like tonight is booked, they tend to bring up people's stuff like, yes, we're going to clear stuff.
Here, look at this. Yeah. Yeah, been feeling that.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Mm,
All right, well, we'll set the intention to resolve that tonight. Let's
absolutely.
make it happen.
Yeah. It's actually, and sorry, there's a second thing that you were talking about with that whole idea of, and I don't know whether this is my perception of the situation or if it's what actually happened, but my dad, I think there would have been times based on the whole emotional history of our family where he totally didn't want to be there. And yeah, now that you say that, I can see how over time I've attracted in certain people that have that unavailability
Yeah,
and
because
playing out that same scenario.
if you attracted in people who were available and were just there, your energy would have
Mm.
like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't know how to
Yeah.
manage this.
Ew.
You're not familiar. And then that's what happens with healing. You release the buttons being pushed, and then yeah, the next layer, next level of people come in. It's awesome. Thank you for sharing that one. So I want to go down a bit of a path now about talking a little bit about past lives and soul contracts, and then I'm going to go a little bit more into the science of where I believe some of these beliefs come from. I know within somebody's soul's journey that we come to Earth to experience the polarity, duality, love, hate, black and white, time, space, all of the interesting things that we have here on Earth that we just don't have in other worlds. And so, if your soul's growth and evolution, you do want to experience, believe it or not, a lifetime of poverty as well as a lifetime of extreme abundance to be able to work out the dichotomy and that sacred neutral in the middle. So, if you've had a past life where you've been fiercely independent, um, this lifetime may be coming up with a level of codependency. So between lives, you would have been at a soul contract table. From my experience with countless clients at the soul contract table, you would have selected with somebody within that soul family, which is not blood related, but looked at different options, different scenarios. You would have selected your parents to be able to help you achieve that overriding goal. And again, with this one here, we're talking about that codependency. So you would have looked amongst the photo albums of the soul family. Those two look like they're going to be able to help me experience codependency. Won't that be awesome? And then off you go on your journey to being in the womb. There's a lot more involved in picking the body, picking the themes, picking the lessons, picking the teachings. I love to play with all of that between lives. But focusing on tonight's intention with how this is all set up, as I spoke about earlier, somebody may have come in with the soul's journey to experience fertility being a theme. And so a woman may put her hand up to say, okay, I want to experience fertility, what it's like to create life, what it's like to be here within Mother Earth's energy to create. I want all of that yummy, wonderful energy. And of course, there's a polarity that comes within the fertility. There's the miscarriage, there's the abortion, there's the adoption, there's the IVF. We've got all of the different kinds of perspectives that can be played in that arena. And so another soul, as I said earlier, who may not have experienced life here on Earth for thousands of years, just wants to experience what's been going on and then need a ride out. Like, okay, we're going to plan on miscarriage, believe it or not. And so I find this absolutely fascinating with where my mind goes about how being in the womb space is like being in that portal of time or being on a bridge between one world and another. And your life force is actually so vulnerable that you can escape, hit the exit button, off you go. Or are you committed to the soul contract that's ahead of you? Are you committed to face whatever's in front of you? Or again, do you need to go out and rewrite the contract? So I find this piece here so fascinating about going back to the womb to learn how to trust yourself and to learn how to commit to yourself and your self-worth, your soul's journey, all the things. Is it just me a little bit cray cray, or like Erin, does this get you excited too?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it just blows my mind. And I think I had a very brief experience in the room, and that was a huge changer for me. So, yeah, so excited to kind of see where it goes tonight.
For somebody who has been trained in the science world, the themes that I'm talking about with soul contracts and, you know, that portal of time, it still translates, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it obviously not spot on,
Not
but
in the science books, no.
no, but absolutely. And I think the idea of being able to explore this world is so different. Science is 100 years behind. Like it's so far behind in terms of what can be explored and what can be healed, as opposed to in this space.
Yeah, yes, yes, absolutely. I would agree with you though. This type of knowledge, the metaphysical, you know, listen to your body, the whole soul's journey piece, it has been there in ancient cultures, and then mainstream, we wiped all this stuff under the rug, and it's coming back to the surface. It's really, yeah, I find it extremely exciting. But as we're going through the womb experience tonight, I want to introduce another chapter, a different perspective with you. As I explore the mother, father, baby roles, I just ask you to put aside the gender, the sexuality aside, and I just want to focus on what I spoke about earlier, the duality of the masculine and the feminine. And I just want to be able to showcase this example for you to, again, to paint that picture on where you can take this with your clients. As we know, you know, we've got the sperm, we've got the egg, we make a baby. Overall, our offspring is going to be that source of pride, that source of fulfillment. It's going to reinforce the parent's legacy. It's going to provide that emotional, psychological satisfaction. Obviously, having healthy offspring also reduces the stress and the burden on healthcare. So when we focus on creating a human, we're all willing participants coming here to experience that human experience. We all want that fulfillment, that freedom, and the best start for the next generation. I want to share with you my like wow of a moment when I started to channel this in that the healthy in brackets, healthy mother the feminine is designed to love you unconditionally. You are part of her, and she created you perfectly. So, you know, you are my baby, and I'm going to love you and accept you no matter what. So she's going to have the absolute utmost belief in your potential because you are a reflection of her identity. So her guidance is actually going to help you be secure in this world, and that being secure, that reflection, all of that, we can only imagine the kinds of beliefs that she wants to instill for her little one in her own image. In contrast to that, we've got the healthy father, the inverted commas, healthy father, and he's going to provide you with the strategy for what you need to do in this world to be accepted and secure. So again, this is going to be the measure of your drive and ambition. So trusting that this child has his guidance, he's going to put in things in place to be able to prepare that child for a prosperous life. So he's going to be that external validation and represents again what you need to do in this world to be secure because you're a reflection of his identity. Again, chunking right up, going general. But can you see here that the mother represents your internal validation, what matters to you, your self-worth, your belief in yourself? And then the father actually represents the external validation, the need for that material, security, all of the things. When I'm starting to piece this all together here, I see you nodding, Jess. What's happening for you at your end?
No, honestly, I'm just piecing the pieces together where, you know, with the healthy feminine and the internal validation, that self-trust, that commitment to self. And yeah, the masculine of the doing, right? So it's like that external validation. It's making a lot of sense in my brain. So that's the nod.
Yeah. What about you, Nicole, when we're talking about where the internal validation comes from versus the external validation in a healthy, optimum
Yeah, well,
sense?
I guess my mind just went to I seek external validation, but dad was not a huge part of my life. So then I'm matching that into stuff that you said around, was he around while I was in the womb? What was his intention? Did I take that on? So that I'm just
Okay.
starting to marry all that together.
Oh, interesting. What's happening in your head? Crystal, I want to hear what your perspective, what's coming up for you as we're unpacking this.
Probably the same. Just taking myself as an example and not having my dad around when I was a kid and growing up, and how that's actually affected my doing, which is a big part of my own issues, always has been. So it's really interesting to marry that up in terms of like the issues that I see within, not the issues, but the stuff
Challenges.
that I see with the challenges, good word, that I see within myself that are completely reflected in that relationship or lack thereof.
Yeah.
And very much focused on my internal environment.
Yeah.
Sometimes in an unhealthy way, like it's just really interesting to marry the two up and see where I've kind of tipped the balance a little bit too high in one area versus something that I'm lacking in another area with my challenges. So it's eye-opening, that one.
Yeah, I shared a similar sort of aha when this was all being channeled in, where a male coach had said to me, your father doesn't owe you anything, and it was just like this, don't be so rude to me, but then it was like, well, actually, okay, and then this is where that information started to come in, the external validation. Yeah, it was a fascinating thing that no matter what I had done or what I achieved or the money in the bank or the whatever, and it still wasn't hitting enough. And then it was like, well, according to who? And so, all of our NLP processes shrink him down, shrink dad down, blink in black and white, and shift it to the internal validation. Yeah, it's fascinating.
So good.
But if we take it away from our own personal experience and look at the design when, the grand councils were designing humans, we can see that programming is going to be created deep, deep, deep within the unconscious to ensure reproduction, to ensure the evolution of mankind. Like, this is the designs and the beliefs to be able to make sure that we're driven to have children. And after having four, like, I won't finish that sentence. But yeah, this is quite fascinating how the design, when you think of the spiritual soul contracts, your soul's evolution, what's designed to be healthy, how we achieve that, the health and healing, why we're all driven to have that high vibrational healing. Essentially, some of this is coming back to that neutral of your own validation. I do also want to point out there with the masculine thing, which I won't go down too far, but before we had modern DNA tests, your mother could claim that the baby belongs to you, but there isn't actually any certainty with that. So if a man has an unconscious program that his children are a representation of him, they're his legacy, this is what my offspring produce, these successful little beings, aren't I wonderful? Then it's a real gamble for a man to be able to say, yes, I'm making the commitment. And I'm not sure if you want to speak to that at all, Manny, being the only man in this group tonight, but it's quite fascinating how that reinforces the commitment issues that we've all kind of maybe worked through. Can you relate to that on some level, or within the men that you know, Manny, with the commitment that they make to their wives and their children?
Yeah, I can relate to a lot of stuff, yeah. But yeah, I don't know how to put it here.
Yeah. Yeah, going pretty high level with this stuff. I've put you right on the spot. Is there anything that you did want to share with any of the content there?
Um, no, I was just thinking about my family while you were talking and how the dynamics were. And I mean, me and my dad, like, we always been very feminine, like, we always had feminine energy, and so it was different for us. But then there was somebody else who was like controlling.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then it was probably then a very strategic way to be the feminine masculine to stay out of the way of somebody else who was so dominating in their energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we go into a womb experience, I just want to share with you four of the case studies to have a look at some of my own clients where it's like, "Oh, isn't that interesting?" And we were able to solve their problems by going back to the womb. So one particular case study was when this client picked up on the doubt from the masculine's commitment that with dad doubting that the baby was actually his, the baby's energy, the person, the client started to lack that self-trust, and as an adult would go well and truly out of their way to prove that they're good enough. And their measure of self-worth was based on that external feedback. So there was no amount of doing that could satisfy that external validation because, again, it was all unconscious programming. So this can look like a professional athlete where they've got those father issues and they're striving to be their best at all costs, sacrificing their own needs to be able to get somebody else's acknowledgement. It can be that drive and the ambition at a superhuman kind of level, again, trying to get that significance. So they're going to have to use willpower and force to do all of the hard work instead of tapping into their passion and their creativity to live a life authentically. Angelique, I imagine you've had clients like that or you've seen that in people.
Yeah, I was just thinking of, I can't say too much, but a family member, in-law, that didn't have a father around, and then she married and had other children, but he never had his true father around, and very almost narcissistic energy. I'm
Yeah.
better, and that's how he used to speak. He used to put everyone else down to to validate himself, I guess. And yeah, I was just thinking about him when that was coming up. It gives me a bit more understanding of what was going
Yeah.
on. Yeah, it's
Yeah, and then it's
interesting.
interesting to tap into the streams of energy, how that just is so draining. For
Mm,
me, it just looks like there's this stream of like wanting a connection and then the energy just goes like it goes nowhere.
yeah.
And so, yeah, and then of course that's that powerlessness that makes them quite angry. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was
The
very
next,
hard to be. He was very hard to be around for me because my
yeah,
energy is quite.
yeah, because you could pick up on the phoniness.
Yeah, yeah. I don't do well with that sort of energy. So yeah.
The next quick one is like the absent father. So a variety of different cases that I've had. This one's quite general. Again, not getting that external validation, trying to prove their worth, not good enough, low mood, the depression, forever questioning where they belong. And again, there's that stream of energy that just goes out into the ether. It doesn't have the next anchor point to connect to. And so they make their father's decision to not commit as a measure of their lack of worth. And as I said earlier, they're going to attract in situations where it looks like their partner wants in, like they got one foot in, but one foot out. So the client is actually more comfortable not knowing where they stand. And it then validates the backwardsness of this. It then validates how much they've got to give, do more, because that's what they know, the certainty that that will make them feel good momentarily. So it's a lot of immediate gratification, but then it gets nowhere, which gets to the burnout. So that's one particular case. The next one there I've got is the lack of validation from the maternal. So a pattern like this where the baby can pick up on the stress of mum maybe not wanting the baby or not wanting to be trapped with the father figure, all of that stuff. It can be like acid on the skin when you go into the womb space. You've got to be really careful as coaches when you go back into the womb. Some clients will immediately feel it, and other clients are like just all floaty and having a good time. But this particular situation and scenario, you can see that it immediately sets somebody up with boundary issues, challenges in their ability to receive, because they definitely have their needs and wants, but when they put it out there, they receive such toxic energy and resentment coming back that it creates an awful, awful problem for especially women, again, needing to receive, but it's going to cost me if I ask for what I want. So this person will have a lot of difficulty showing their hand, is what I like to say. Like they'll have difficulty letting people know what they need. So yeah, this particular client that I'm thinking of, she just absolutely just blamed herself and yeah, all the things that went with it. Is this resonating with anyone sort of thinking of maybe not themselves, but other clients or anything? Is it anyone sort of nodding? Let's look in the group. Maybe, maybe not. It's a different one, but yeah, with the mum maybe not wanting them, yeah, it makes it difficulty to receive. And then the final example I've got here is mum being really overbearing. Like, this is my baby. Like, it's so smothering. My baby's amazing. It can't do anything wrong. You know, this baby can actually grow up to be very, very, very entitled. And they focus so much on that internal importance that they actually ignore the external validation. So their actions and words can be quite harsh, and they can have issues with like co-workers or new partners because their ego is so driven in that internal validation that they're almost absent from reality. They don't need the external validation, so their scales are well and truly lopsided. Anyone relate? You don't have to name names. Anyone relate to people who are so self-entitled, so full of themselves in a negative way? Everyone's too quiet. You're all too polite. Polite. Evie, you know people like this, surely.
We
She's
all know
nodding.
one at least, I think.
What was that, Manny?
I said we all know one person at least like that. Yeah.
Aren't they wonderful at the Christmas parties to hang around?
Oh,
I know
I
so
can
many
think of
complex
an
cases of
example.
this where one,
Oh,
oh, sorry, go, Jen.
no, you go, Emily.
I was just going to say briefly, I coming to mind is some people that I know that have that case in the mother, and then there's something completely different in the father, and like they flip flop between those two sort of characteristics, and it's quite I can't unsee it now. It's like broken in two ways.
It's hilarious. So, like, yeah, can't unsee it now. It's like, yeah,
No,
yeah.
yeah,
It's
it makes complete sense. I never thought about that over smothering as a like then making them over internally validate. Very cool. Thank you.
what were you gonna add?
I'm thinking of kind of a funny example, but it's so true to both of what you're saying. So I'm currently watching My Kitchen Rules Australia, and there is this mother-daughter duo on there, and they are very entitled, very everything that you explain. And it's interesting because when they got up and it was their turn to do the cooking, even though they're cooking for two world-class chefs, they got critiqued quite negatively for one of their dishes, but they didn't take it on. They went back behind the scenes and they're like, well, no, they're wrong. So that external, I don't know if that like kind of makes sense with that external validation, but like they just didn't take it on. They were just like, no, I'm just in my own world type thing.
Yeah, and their self-belief of themselves was just through the roof. They're just absent from reality and external validation.
Yeah.
Crystal, you were about to say something or not?
I was just going to piggyback onto what Emily said about people who have the double, and you can really see them oscillate from like the give me the external validation versus the I'm so good at everything, look at me type personalities. And like, again, like Emily, I can literally see about 4 or 5 people in front of me that I know of that I'm like, whoa, okay, I can see that now. You can't unsee that.
Yeah, it reduces the confusion when you know where it's coming from.
Absolutely. That just took it right down to base level. That just took everything out. That's good. That's good.
Nicole, with this content, the internal, external validation, do you see this being useful with your clients?
Yes, I do. I'm just trying to think of different people and how, like, which way they are, one or the other.
Yeah. If you had more answers about how you'd use this with clients, like, do you want to share any more answers?
No.
With you, when you've got clients that are coming for kinesiology, coaching, have you noticed that there's a pattern with the type of client that you attract?
Yes, I think they will often come in with whatever I happen to be experiencing at the time, or they have similar backgrounds or a similar family history. But I guess where my mind is going is trying to get people to see this for themselves.
Yeah. Angelique, do you think it's important that they see this for themselves?
I said, good question. Sometimes even if you point it out, I don't wait for people to see things for themselves. You gently nurture them along. But no, sometimes they're just not going to. So,
Yeah.
you kind of work with what you've got.
Yeah.
Kind of how I would look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that your focus your focus and the emphasis is the healing and the results.
Yeah.
Do you find they get the aha moment at the other end when things have been worked through? Like, oh, that's right, I can see that pattern.
Yeah. And when we go over it at the end, I say a lot, do you see that, or do you, so we go over things. I don't just brush over things, we go over it. And does that resonate? And they don't have to have a big epiphany over things. They can just go, oh yeah, and then they sit with it. And
Yeah.
next time
Yes.
they might come back and go, oh yeah, I thought about what you said, and that. Yeah.
Yeah. Often the aha needs to come in, that third, like that missing piece. They know they're stressed, they know they're stuck. You can teach and tell till the cows come home, but until they get that third piece, that there's another option, there's another way to look at this. And that's exactly what Timeline does. You go in and you access the learnings, like, oh, right, so I didn't realize that there was a third option. Or the lessons to say, okay, I hand that back to mum, I hand that back to dad. But until then, that unconscious program is so fixed that they can't see it in a different light until it's shifted. Yeah. Jess, have you noticed that with your clients?
What part though? Like, I feel like
the requirement to get the aha, the lessons to then be able to, because you're somebody who likes to know the instructions, where we're going, how is this all connected? But have you found in your own journey that you needed the third piece, the lessons, the aha, to be able to then go back and solve the problem?
Yes. Yeah. For myself, I think so. I've like wanted, yeah. I want that aha to be able to go solve it. But I'm thinking about also my clients too. I think there would be two that would be very similar. Um, so it's really interesting because it's like when you say, I think you were asking Nicole about like what type of clients does she attract in? For me, it's the same. Like I attract in people who are either going through something similar to me or someone similar past or things. So, and I think we're all kind of the same in that, where we need to like have that third sort of step.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else that wants to contribute or an aha any before we move into the process?
Actually, I might, only because that what we were just talking about. I have a variety of clients of different ages, and from a practical sense, I've really noticed that I have a 16-year-old client, I have 28 to 32, I have a 36-year-old, and they're all very different in how they process things. And I'm really finding at the moment especially with the younger one, obviously requires those bridges to be formed by myself in a really gentle way, because she's still trying to work out what is going on and what she's feeling and all of those things. So I'm finding that a little bit more with the younger ones, but then my eldest client, who's 36-ish, we've just come back from a 3-week break through a 4-week break with no sessions, and she's come in with like all of these ahas and experiences that she didn't experience for the first 3 months. That not in that way though. She still experienced the ahas, but they weren't as massive and as she's telling me she's coming in and she's like, 2 things can be true at the same time, and that's okay. And I'm just like, whoa. From someone who initially came in like refused to feel emotions in all capacity, to now coming in being able to feel, and 2 things can be true and this is okay, and I've given this person back this stuff, and I'm like, okay, yep. So I think it's very individual with a lot of clients from a practical sense when you're actually in it. And of course, with the younger ones, I find that they just need a little bit more of a path drawn for them in a certain way. Not that we're telling them what to feel or what to think and how to react, but I just think a few extra words are probably required in that sense for younger ones still working it out.
Yeah, but you also highlighted there, Crystal, why my coaching programs are 3 months.
Yeah.
At the beginning, they're like, this isn't working, or blah, 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 and then the 3-month mark, and they're like, oh, wow, okay, I actually need time now to integrate this. I'll see you in, 3 or 6 months, like
Yeah, absolutely.
when you're working with timeline and going straight to the root cause, like the training wheels come off, they go and fly.
Yeah. And I have seen that with my oldest client that I was telling you about, but also with my client who has like full-blown ADHD, autism, all the social stuff, all the food stuff, all the things you can imagine. So there's like, she's had the most progress, but we've been the most consistent with her because we both felt that was what was required for her to be consistent in her little ahas, as opposed to the dip and the drop of the breaks. So yeah, it was just very different for each of them.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, again, there's something in that 3-month mark.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely.